Alright, our next benchmark is benchmark 8. I can convert rational numbers to decimals and decimals to rational numbers. So basically we're going to be going from decimals to fractions and fractions back to decimals and converting them both ways. So let's start with some of the fractions that we should know. For example, 1/2. We should know that that's 0.5 as a decimal. We can find that by doing 1 divided by 2. 2 goes into 1 0 times. And then we just do long division. 2 goes into 10 5 times. And so 0.5 is 1/2 as a decimal. Another fraction we should know as a decimal is 3/4. We should know that that's 0.75. But if not, we can use long division to find it as a decimal. So we always put our top number on the inside of our division box, the bottom number on the outside. 4 goes into 3, 0 times. 0 times 4 is 0. And then we subtract, add a decimal, add a 0, and bring that down. 4 goes into 30. 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. 30 minus 28 is 2. Bring down another 0. 4 goes into 20 5 times, which is 0.75. So to change a fraction to a decimal, our rule is to use long division. Remember, the top number goes on the inside of the division bar. The bottom number goes on the outside of the division bar. So this is top number, and on the outside we have our bottom number. Now let's say we had to convert a mixed number to a decimal. So let's say we had 3 1/4. We're going to take a look at the fraction first and do our long division. So we are going to do 1 divided by 4 and find what that is as a decimal. 4 goes into 1 0 times. Then we subtract, add a decimal, bring down a 0. 4 goes into 10 2 times. 4 times 2 is 8. Subtract, we get 2. Bring down another 0. 4 goes into 20 5 times, and we're done. So 1/4 equals 0.25. But we have 3 1/4, so our decimal would be 3.25. That whole number just goes in front of our decimal point. And that's how we turn a mixed number into a decimal. Now try these two on your own. Pause the video and then restart for instructions. I want you to do 2/5 as a decimal and 4 1/5 as a decimal. Pause the video now, then restart for the answers. So to do 2/5, we put 2 on the inside, 5 on the outside. 5 goes into 2 0 times. So we do 5 times 0, which is 0. We subtract, add your decimal, bring down a 0. 5 goes into 20 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. 0, so 2/5 equals 0.4 as a decimal. To solve 4 1/5, remember we're going to look at only the fraction first, so we're going to do 1 divided by 5. 5 goes into 1 0 times. So we add a decimal, bring down a 0. 5 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. We don't have a remainder. And then we have this 4. So 4 and 1/5 equals 4.2 as a decimal. So far we've looked at terminating decimals where the decimal stops. Now let's look at repeating decimals where the decimal will go on for a while. Let's look at 1/3. We're still going to do 1 divided by 3. 3 goes into 1 0 times. So we subtract, add a decimal, add a 0. 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract, we get 1, add a 0. 3 goes into 10 again, 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract, we get 1. And you'll notice that we're going to keep repeating 3's. So 1/3 as a decimal equals 0.3 repeating. And to show that it's repeating, we put a line above the number that's repeating. Try 2/3 on your own. Pause the video, solve it, and then restart the video to see if you got your answer correct. So to do 2/3, we do 2 divided by 3. 3 goes into 2 0 times. Subtract, we get 2. Add a decimal, add a 0. 3 goes into 20 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. Subtract, we get 2. Bring down a 0. 3 goes into 20 6 times again. 3 times 6 is still 18. Bring down a 0. 3 goes into 26 times again. And so it's going to keep repeating 6's, so 2/3 equals 0.6 repeating. And we show the repeating with a line above the number that's repeating. Now to go from a decimal to a fraction, we have to keep in mind our place value. So if we think about place value, if we have a number and then a decimal, this first digit is the 10ths place. The second is the 100ths place. The third is the 1000ths place. And we won't go much after 3. So we have to keep in mind these place values. So think of this as 10, 100, 1,000. So let's look at the number 0.35 and let's turn that to a fraction. To do this, we have to look at the number that's in the last digit. And this last digit is in the 100ths place. We would read this as 35/100ths. So to turn it into a fraction, our denominator is going to be 100. Our numerator is going to be 35. Whatever's after the decimal goes on top. And then we just reduce. So this would be 7/20ths. So 0.35 equals 7/20ths as a fraction. Let's try another one. Let's say we had 0.7. The 7 is in the 10ths place. So 10 is our denominator. 7 goes on top. Whatever's behind the decimal goes on top. This one cannot be reduced, so 7/10ths is our answer. So let's say we had 4.25 as a decimal, and we want to change that to a fraction. We're still going to look at the place value of the last digit. So that 5 is in the 100ths place. So 100 goes on bottom. Everything behind the decimal still goes on top. This whole number just goes out in front. So now we have a mixed number. and all we have to do is reduce. We can divide the top and bottom by 25, so we would get 4 1/4. And that's how we go from a decimal to a fraction with a whole number in front. I want you to try these two on your own. Pause the video and then check your work. 0.32 and 5.4. So pause the video now. To do the first one, the 2 is in the hundredths place. So we're going to have 100 on bottom, 32 on top. Then we can reduce by dividing by 4, and we would get 8/25. And that would be our fraction. To do the second one, the 4 is in the tenths place. We're going to put the 4 on top. The whole number just goes in front of our fraction for a mixed number, and then we can reduce. So we would get 5 2/5 for our fraction. Now keep in mind, if we're changing a negative fraction, so let's say negative 2/5 to a decimal. If our fraction's negative, our decimal's negative. So we're still going to use the same steps. We're still going to do 2 divided by 5, and do our long division. Add your decimal, add your 0. And since it's 0.4, our decimal would be negative 0.4. So if it's negative, it stays negative. So keep that in mind. Same for going from a decimal to a fraction. This is the end of benchmark 8. Now begin your next assignments assigned in class.